I feel sometimes that Joe Biden is the perfect president for the time because he's like the perfect metaphor of what it is. This system is over. And for all of the talk of diversity, what have you got? But what I think you can demonstrate is over the last 50, 60 years, through lobbying and demonstrable means, corporations have had more and more ability to exert, influence and downright control government policy, regardless of which party is in power. And then a crisis event took place, and the momentum that carried it through, like governments like control. That's what governments are about, is authority. But big corporations like profit. That's what they're at. And those two things came together. So the solution that was suggested is, well, we can exert control through lockdowns and potentially coming as close as, damn it, to mandating medicines. They can benefit. The indemnity that they were granted, it was kind of a perfect storm and perfect revelation. We spoke to a person, I don't think you've had him on because I'm sure I would have been aware if you had, this guy, Martin Gurri, who was a CIA operative who wrote a book called The Revolt of the Public. And he said he was a CIA analyst in 2001. And in 2001, there was as much information published that year as in all human history up to that point. And then 2002 it doubled again. And he said when you look at those analytics on a screen, it looks like a tidal wave. And he said that image stayed with him, and he recognized that power was going to alter radically, because if information can be created and exchanged that quickly, centralized authority is going to be massively challenged. Either the way that we govern communities and nations is going to radically alter, with more power being devolved, with more democracy, with more ability to run your own communities, with more feedback, and communities such as the online world is starting to suggest, communities forming around subjects or individuals or figures or ideologies. Or, and this seems to be what's happening, centralized authority is going to double down, look for ways to smear dissenters, censor, create new categories like misinformation, disinformation, suddenly find acceptable views of 5-10 years ago are now not acceptable and are banned. Tolerance somehow decreasing under the veil of increasing tolerance. Literal Orwellianism, them changing the meaning of words, going back, editing books, stuff that we've seen in dystopian sci-fi actually happening. Martin Gurri, the CIA analyst, offers us that the reason that's happening is because there's a recognition that centralized authority models cannot operate. The elites cannot govern the planet in the same typical way that they've been able to, say, from the 50s or whenever. I'm not an expert in this kind of stuff. But he said, unless we're going to lose things that he considers worth saving, because this guy, Martin Gurri, he's not like a radical person. He likes liberal democracy. He's a first-generation immigrant, I think, from Cuba in this country, worked at the CIA. He's not some sort of pot-smoking radical. He's like a person, but he was saying that what's happened is they've not been able to acknowledge the way that the world has changed. It's changed in an unprecedented way. The first observable sign, or one of, being Napster, the second one, the Arab Spring, the Occupy movement. They've not recognized that now there's a different conversation. And then, you can add you actually to that, because what happened with now what we'll do is we'll shut this geezer down. But they couldn't, because the economics of that, we were already too big in the space for that to happen. So they don't know how to. He said what's going to happen is even new elites will emerge that understand how technology works. And I guess that's why we're seeing, have seen the rise of social media, the amount of power those big tech companies have, their abilities to evade taxation, the degree to which the Twitter files revealed they work closely with deep state operatives, to a point that we just wouldn't know had Elon Musk made those moves.
I think they're also operating with very crude tools currently that will soon change with AI.
Right.
I think AI is going to completely shift the narrative, and then from then on you're going to be dealing with disinformation on just a vast scale of impossible to decipher. When I was talking about it during the election, and people were like, I was actually talking about it with Eric Weinstein, and he was like, I can't vote for Biden. And he goes, I can't vote for Trump. And I go, I would vote for Trump before I'd vote for Biden. Just because I think with Biden, he's gone. He's gone. You're going to be relying on his cabinet. And I knew his cabinet would be this fucking sideshow of diversity, which is exactly what it is. That one person who stole all the women's clothes, that Sam Brinton, we highlighted on the podcast yesterday, that's a diversity hire. You just said, oh, look at this. A man who dresses like a woman and has a beard and a mustache but also wears lipstick. This is perfect for us. I don't give a fuck what this guy's good at or bad at. I don't give a fuck what their credentials are. This makes us look like we're inclusive. This makes us look like we're on the right side. So let's hire this person. And you can't have those kind of people running a Ben and Jerry's. You certainly can't have those kind of people running the fucking most powerful government the world's ever known. It's nuts. It's nonsense.
What they've been able to do is introduce contentious issues to the forefront of the culture that prevent the kind of alliances that are necessary taking place. The reason that when I'm over here, I'm having conversations, in addition to the great privilege of coming on your show with, like, you know, going on Bill Maher or going on to Tucker or Ben Shapiro, is because I feel like there's got to be a new conversation around politics. We can't just stay in these little camps. Now, like, I feel sometimes that Joe Biden is the perfect president for the time because he's like the perfect metaphor of what it is. This system is over. And for all of the talk of diversity, what have you got? You've got a career politician, white male, that's falling apart before your very eyes. It's telling you that it's bullshit.
Yes.
And that they'll put people in positions in order to carry that narrative, but for no other reason, because I don't truly believe that they deeply care about those ideas. And even if they do deeply care, the decisions they're making are decisions that are in alignment with the agenda of Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, with centralized banking authority. It's not going to change the world for any of them. They've managed to make ordinary American people hate one another, like on the basis of a 50-50 split. You can't criminalize half of a country and say that they're far-right fascists any more than you can say that, in my view, extreme leftists. These kind of issues oughtn't be what's determining how a country is run. And when they are the issues that determine how a country is run, the powerful run amok. The elites are able to pursue their agenda just fine.
Yeah, because they've got us in these ideological camps, and they've got people infighting and ignoring real problems.
Yes.
And it's such a transparent hustle. It's so obvious to see how it's being set up and how easy it is to get people to fall in line with it. That's one of the most disturbing things that happened during COVID, is how easy people rolled over. I was like, this is wild. I expected more pushback. I expected more people to ask about the data, and particularly when they started saying they were going to vaccinate children. I expected more people to go, hey, what's the fucking data on kids? Or when they were telling people to vaccinate pregnant women. I was like, what data do you have on pregnant women? Because pregnant women, if you like normal medication, when a pregnant woman is taking normal medication, they have to be very careful. Because stuff that you can take when you're not pregnant with very little concern, all of a sudden becomes a real issue if you have a developing fetus in your body. It's a giant issue. You're a father, you know what it's like when your wife goes through that. It's kind of crazy because there's real concern. Like, you can't take this, you can't drink, you can't smoke, you can't this, you can't that. You shouldn't take stem cells, you shouldn't take nootropics. There's so many different things. But yet this vaccine with zero testing on any pregnant people was fine.
Wasn't it worrying that when you're
encouraged.
When you're layman's speculation, like the speculation of people that have not been at university and like, hey, but hold on, you're not going to get pregnant women volunteering for clinical trials, so there's no way you could have tested this on. Hey, hold on, you can't know what's going to happen 5 years down the line because you've not had a 5-year time frame unless you were preparing this thing 5 years ago, in which case how come you were preparing this thing 5 years ago? The kind of speculations that were being had conversationally in spaces like this one have proven to be true. You can't validate it. Children aren't doing clinical trials. Turns out they didn't do clinical trials for transmission or have any viable data that it stopped transmission. It was like that's one of the things that alarmed me most is how easy people rolled over to an authoritarian edict in countries like mine and yours, where it was assumed that wouldn't happen. I remember the narrative being when the stuff was going on in China, good luck trying that stuff in the United States.
But
and then they
pulled it off.
If you amplify fear, I feel like it might be like with how it is on an individual level, although it's always hard to scale what affects you as an individual to what affects a bloody planet. But like, if I'm frightened, I become suggestible. When I'm frightened, I'll be like, oh, just give me authority. I'm calling the 911 now. Right. I'm willing to, when my wife is sick or whatever, I'm calling, suddenly the Reiki ain't an option no more. Fuck the crystals, get that shit out of here. Get me a physician in a white coat with a stethoscope driving a Bentley right now. I want the comfort of that. I'll do whatever I want. Pfizer, give them the money, for Christ's sake. And I feel like if you do that, if you, as they say, gaslight an entire nation, if people are operating at a state of fear, I mean, what does that do to us biochemically? Fear and authority go together, I feel. Like, when you are frightened, I want someone else to be in control.
Yeah, and that's what was one of the scary things about the pandemic was they learned from that.